Hello, I'm Danielle Whittier. I'm a biomedical engineering graduate student at the University of Calgary, and today I'd like to tell you about my research in osteoporosis and how I've tried to incorporate a patient-oriented approach to a clinically traditional project scheme. So a little bit about osteoporosis itself. About 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men will suffer from an osteoporotic fracture in their lifetime. And this disease is actually more prevalent than breast cancer, stroke, and heart attack all combined. Yet, diagnosis and treatment is decades behind. And in fact, this is only going to get worse. As our population ages and lives longer, this disease will occur more and more often, and fracture disease will be on the rise. This will essentially put a greater burden on our already extremely strained healthcare system. And so I want to debunk some thoughts about osteoporosis. It's not just an old age disease. It's not just a woman's disease. It is something more than that. Over the years, researchers have begun to understand a bit more about osteoporosis and what healthy bone aging looks like. And osteoporosis itself is a lot more than that. It's the accelerated decrease in bone mass and bone structure, resulting in extreme frailty of the bones. And this is so severe, it gets to the point where something like a fall from standing height or less, say in your garden when you're gardening, can result in a severe fracture, like the one shown here. This is a hip fracture. And this is the motivation for my study. These have a devastating impact, not just on our healthcare system, but also on the patients and their families who experience them. And to put this in a bit of perspective, I'll kind of rattle off a few facts about it. So about 30,000 Canadians a year suffer from a hip fracture. Unfortunately, 1 in 3 of these individuals will not survive past the first year. And those that do will have a significantly reduced quality of life. Many won't even return home. And so this is why we want to address this issue and prevent these fractures in the first place. And so for me as an engineer and scientist, I decided, hey, I want to look at diagnosis. How can we improve that? Today, what's done is essentially a bone density scan. And what this looks like is what you see right here. Essentially, we decide, hey, based on your bone density, you have normal osteopenia or osteoporosis bone. But unfortunately, it's not very accurate. Over half of individuals who have had a hip fracture end up not even having this come out as a positive test, as in having osteoporosis. And the reason for this is because it only looks at bone density in 2D. It doesn't tell us about bone structure and about the osteoporosis that's eating away at that microstructure that keeps the bone strong. So my lab has done a lot of work in this area about imaging bone at very high resolutions so we can get really cool images and get to know these bone structures and quantify them and analyze them and engineer them and understand what is the difference between osteoporotic bone and normal bone. And I can go into a ton of detail about this and about what we do and all the science behind it. But as I started my graduate studies, I also learned about patient-oriented research. And I thought to myself, why not think about, hey, what does the patient see when they go through their bone health care? And I found some very surprising things. It's not just our diagnosis, which does need work, don't get me wrong, but there's more than that. And it turns out that these patients aren't even getting treated or diagnosed for treatment in the first place. In fact, digging into the numbers, the majority, in fact, 80% of individuals who have confirmed osteoporosis were never even screened in the first place. So what does this mean? It means most of the people that I'm trying to help, I'm not even going to impact. So this really changed my perspective on the research and made me think about what more do I need to do to help address this growing issue. And this isn't just a technical problem that a bunch of people can solve in a room. It's a systematic issue that requires input from many, many people. This can be patients, informal caregivers, family members, administration, surgeons, GPs, everyone alike has an input and say in osteoporotic bone health. So luckily, my research team, from the very beginning, always had collaborations with the Fracture Liaison Services, a great program that's trying to tackle the same issue. What they look at is getting these individuals who've had a big fracture connected with diagnosis and treatment. I want to take that a step further and find out what are we doing wrong that's not getting these people treated or diagnosed at least before a fracture occurs. So they've helped us a lot, though, along the way. They've helped give us some information and learn about the patient's perspective when it comes to this research. Now, what I want to do is essentially climb this patient engagement spectrum and incorporate more patients into the research as I go through my education. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what that's going to look like, or what I hope it looks like. So first off, we're going to recruit patients. And this is not a trivial task. It's actually quite difficult. These people are going through a life-changing event, and we're approaching them to participate and tell their story. So we're going to collaborate quite in detail with the Fracture Liaison nurses to approach these patients and build a trusting relationship. So beyond just scanning them and screening them, we're going to have them get involved, have them tell their medical story. This will be done through a series of surveys where we can get quantitative data, and also through one-on-one interviews where we're able to hear their story from their perspective and retrospectively what they think could have gone better. From here, we'll find our patient champions, and this could also be family members of patients or informal caregivers. And we want to bring on and get more involved. This will be through idea generation and disseminating this data, understanding what are the trends and interpreting it together through workshops and working sessions. We hope from this we'll find some tangible, crunchy ideas that we can actually implement in real practice. And with these groups, work on identifying what are the primary targets we want to meet in a short term. So this might be, I don't know what it'll look like, to be honest. It may be with fracture liaison services. It may be with orthopedic surgeons. It may be with patients in the community. We'll find out. But this is the hope at the end of this study. So overall, through this process, and with the help of many, many other stakeholders, I hope to essentially climb up this patient engagement ladder over the next 1 to 2 years. And I believe this can be done as long as we take it step by step. So in addition to this, taking it back, I'm originally very kind of engineered focused, very technically heavy in my research. So on top of trying to incorporate it into my own research, I hope to be a champion and bring it back to my lab and to my peers and talk about and share what is patient-oriented research and how can they take chunks and put it into their research as well. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone here and essentially acknowledge in a couple seconds, acknowledge everyone involved that's helped me through this process, especially with some of the platforms specifically who've already given me some consultation on how to structure my methods and all that. So thank you.